So we'll have our first literary session, Flora, Fauna and Footprints, Sustaining Delhi's Urban Green. This is a topic which is close to every Delhiite's heart. Delhi, a city that breathes history and culture, also boasts a rich and often overlooked natural heritage. From the ancient trees that have witnessed centuries of change to the diverse wildlife that calls this metropolis home. Delhi's green spaces are vital to its character and well-being. Our insightful moderator who will guide this important conversation, Professor Anantajeet Goswami, a distinguished economist, author and sustainability advocate. Professor Goswami has over 52 peer-reviewed publications and 13 fiction books to his name. His work spans academia, climate action, and music, making him a true multidisciplinary force in social impact.
I think you should come. Okay, thank you so much. I was just thinking that I was telling Sapna and Madhulika that before, maybe I would have grabbed one of those music instruments and done a performance, so some of the guys would not have moved out of the stage. Anyway, so we will try to entertain you. I know that word for a heavy, boring session like this doesn't suit well, but we'll try our best. I will speak as much as little as possible and will hand over the mic. So let me go straight to the first question. Sapna and Madhulika, Delhi is often described as a garden city. But how do you see its green spaces evolving in a rapidly urbanizing environment? How does your book, Gardens of Delhi, attempt to capture both the historical and modern significance of these spaces?
Not another mic. So, thank you so much. But let me start off by saying this is not going to be a boring session. Not at all. We're going to talk about gardens. Gardens are some of the nicest things about this city. And you know what we don't often realize is that we not only have beautiful gardens, we have very historic gardens. We've had gardens in this city for centuries. Ever since the city, and the city has had many different sites, right? And over the centuries, people who have built cities here, who've built little kasbahs, little settlements, bastis, etc., every time they made a little settlement, they also made a garden next to it. So it's been a very important part of the evolution of the city itself. So it continues to, these gardens have continued to play a very important role in our city, right?
Yeah, I think so. And the whole point is that a garden, it's when Babur came to India. One of the first things he said about northern India was that it was so hot and so humid. And he did not really want to do anything. But one thing he did was to start off making gardens, start laying out gardens. And I think the whole point is that gardens provide a lot of relief. And especially in a climate like Delhi's, when you have it's so dry and arid and right on the edge of the desert, it is the garden is a real point of relief, not just now, but even I can imagine that it might have been that even hundreds of years ago. So, as Swapna would probably tell you maybe later on, the way a garden is envisaged and how it is laid out, the whole plan of a garden has evolved as well. So there's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the oldest garden which you've mentioned in the book is Tughlaq era garden, which is now no longer to be seen in its actual form. It's there in Basant Vihar. It's right behind Basant Vihar. There's a district park there, which used to be a Tughlaq garden. And then, of course, you have the very familiar to most of us, the Mughal Charbagh, which is a quadrilateral sort of garden, which we see so much in places like the Taj Mahal, as well as, of course, as Humayun's tomb, and less well known in Shalimar, etc., Shalimar Bagh, Roshanara Bagh. And then you have the colonial aspect of how these gardens ended up being changed. So, for instance, you have if you go to Red Fort today, okay, Red Fort, one of the important gardens which is still there is called the Hayat Bakhsh Bagh. And the funny thing was, this book, this is the book which Swapna and I wrote. It's called Gardens of Delhi. There's a funny anecdote behind this that the photographer who took the photos for this book, Prabhas Roy, he went to the Red Fort because we told him we want photos of Hayat Baksh. So he went there and he came back and he said, Hayat Baksh, बाग तो लिखा है, पर बाग तो नहीं है, वहाँ कुछ नहीं है. I said, no, how can it be? I said, there is a garden there. So finally, my editor said, look, we need to get on a call together with Prabhas and you please explain to him. So we got on the call and I told him, I said, आप वहाँ से जाइए, आप दीवाने आम के बाद मुड़ जाइए, वहाँ पे राइट को है. He said, हाँ, साइन मुझे दिख गया है, पर वहाँ गार्डन नहीं है. वहाँ तो बस घास है और थोड़े hedges हैं. I said, that is the garden. Because, again, that is how it has changed. Because Hayat Baksh Bagh, in the time of the Mughals, would be completely covered by trees. The canopy of trees used to be so thick that sunlight could not come through during, at this time, So today what you see, those trees all wiped out and just grass, that is again a colonial, So basically what I'm trying to say is that the way the garden appears, that has changed over time. And what we see today is a sort of a mixture of various styles, but I think mostly it's a lot of colonial.
So the gardens have an aesthetic pleasure. They do have a restorative impact on our body and mind. But what I also often feel that gardens also have their own rhythms. They talk to us. And you said about a change in pattern of the garden. So most of the time, every time I walk in the Lodi garden, I try to find out a rhythm and pattern in the way they speak to me. So this is just a curiosity. Did you find that supernatural or the ephemeral moment in the process of writing this book? I mean, in the sense, let's say this tree, how it was some point of the time, and then how it evolved over the colonized pattern. Did you find anything like that?
I'm not saying there's anything supernatural about it, but it's just that I find it very interesting to go to a garden again and again in different seasons. And that's what I did. For this book, I went to Lodi Garden several times. I came to Sundar Nursery several times. And every time you come in the spring, you see a different set of trees in bloom, for instance. And of course, the flowers, change completely, what is laid out in the flower beds. But even if you look at the trees, there are trees which I may find it difficult to identify if they're not in bloom. But as soon as they're in bloom, you can say, oh, okay, this is a tree. And then you remember it for later when it is not in bloom. So it's actually a lesson, It's a lesson in being able to identify, getting to be more familiar with nature, And you, like for instance, you come in the monsoon and Sundar Nursery has this wilderness area. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. And you walk in there and the rest of the year, it's fine. In the monsoon, we went towards that side, and the guard said, "No, mat jaiye, wahan abhi jana allowed nahi." I said, "Kya ho gaya?" He said, "Abhi monsoon hai na, saap bahut nikalte hain." So that you do have those seasonal the cycles change, and there's something very comforting about it. You feel that nature will go on.
So does that comfort or this change in the organic nature of the nature with its ecosystem and species and services, did it create a healing impact on both of you?
On me,
if so, how?
On me, definitely. I'm like, I should just say that I'm passionately fond of nature. So I'm like, if I'm really stressed and I've got a lot of work, I actually just step out into our garden. We have a very tiny garden, and I just step out and I sort of look around at what is there, and we've let our garden sort of go a little wild in places. So there are these bushes and all which attract a whole horde of birds.
People have related to the outdoors, even in a place like Delhi, where one would assume that for much of the year, really the outdoors is not something that you want to spend a lot of time in. But people have related to the outdoors much more than we do. We shut ourselves up in closed rooms. We shut ourselves up in air-conditioned rooms, and we think that is how we should deal with, adverse weather and all of those things. We forget how much our ancestors actually related to nature. Even within nature, I'm also talking about gardens which are artificially created. They are created by people around themselves. So, for instance, you look at a place like Horse Khas. A lot of people would have gone to Horse Khas. The buildings there are a madrasa. It was a college. And if you look at that college, how it is laid out, the rooms are such, the teaching rooms, where the living rooms are very, very small, where people live. They still spend very much time inside the rooms. But if you see where the teaching would have gone on, these are open on both sides. On one side, you would have overlooked the tank, that huge Horse Khas, the huge water reservoir that is there. And on the other side, they would have overlooked the gardens. And you can understand that many times of the year, much of the time, they would even have studied inside the garden. They would have sat under a tree and the teaching would have gone on there. It was the same with people, If you look, for instance, at old houses, old homes in, say, a place like Purani Delhi, Old Delhi, which was originally called Shahjahanabad. If you look at so many of the Havelis there, they have mini gardens also. Today, those gardens have deteriorated. But often they would have a tree, they would have a pool, they would have some plants growing there. Because even if you live in a city and you don't have the idea that is the place where you can enjoy a little bit of nature, where you can enjoy a view of the sky, and maybe some birds can be attracted there. Those kind of things are something that are very, very important to human beings and their sense of well-being, I think.
Swapna, you have brought in a new dimension. You are also bringing in heritage and its connection with cultural lifestyle. So you think, if I put in a hypothesis that yes, heritage, cultural lifestyle can enhance environmental resilience, what will you say?
To the extent that, I feel that yes, we should learn from how, these are tried and tested ways in which people have. And yes, we are separated from that time in many ways. The ways our cities have evolved, the ways our lifestyles have evolved, our technology has moved in certain directions. But at the same time, we should remember that there were these time-tested ways of connecting with nature or connecting with living. That our study of historic gardens, our study of historic cities, how these things, and the garden is peculiar because a garden is a landscape space. It's made by human intervention, but it is a connect between human habitation and nature in that sense. So, yes, I think it's very important. I, as a historian, of course, I feel it's important to study history anyway. But I think yes. And again, what I think is that some of even our modern town planners, if you think of the town planning that has happened in the 20th century, think of how many of our gardens were made around old monuments. So whenever there were old monuments, what they did was they decided, now one option is you break the old monument and you make a colony, a housing colony. They had to make colonies, they made colonies, but what they did was they tried to preserve the monument, make a little garden around it. So while you have your housing colony as well, but at the same time you can have a little bit of a green space with a little bit of history also.
This leads me to the next imagination that, okay, history, nature, sustainability, this space, does it get back and take us to our roots? Does it provoke us to any one of them?
Okay, I will pass it on to Madhulika, but before that, let me make another comment. I think I've said a lot about roots because I'm interested in history, but I think we should talk about our future. I think that is very important because There are disturbing trends that I see. I mean, Madhulika will talk about the horticultural aspect of it and how things have changed and what we have lost of our horticultural heritage. She can address that a little bit more. But I will talk on very general terms. You know, we now live in a city which is enormous if you look at the number of people who live in this city. And what we have been doing is, relative to the numbers of people who live here and often live in very difficult an urban situation, that is conditions that are crowded, etc. We have not really paid attention to this quality of life that can be promoted by having enough green spaces. And by green spaces, I mean green spaces that are accessible to people, green spaces that people can interact with, that they can spend time in. And everybody deserves to have that. So the nursery, we are enjoying this place today, but let us remember this is an elite place. There is a ticket which all of us paid to get in. So not everybody has access to this. South Delhi, Central Delhi, these are very different from other places that we have in Delhi. And I think we don't have enough green spaces. So we have to pay attention to this also. Everybody deserves to enjoy garden spaces, green spaces, natural spaces, and all sorts of things. You need, children need open spaces to play. All of those things are, going forward. We have to think of how we are going to develop this city, because I feel that whereas I see historic cities paid attention to this, I'm not sure that we are paying that much attention to it.
No, I agree about that. Also, I think I'd like to add to one thing which Swapna said. You know, when you're talking about green spaces for everybody, it's not just the case that there is a garden there, but just the fact that you have greenery around you, even something like for instance, I remember when this book was ready, Swapna and I were having a discussion about this, that if you have a look at those blocks of flats which have come up just near Ames, when you're going from Ames towards Southex, there are those tall buildings. And there are these, just a few squiggly trees which have, and just a couple of older trees which have remained. Otherwise, this is just stock buildings. There's nothing over there, not a trace of greenery to relieve that. And every time I go past, I always have this, I feel really sorry for people who live there. I just think, that it would stress me out to look out of a window and not see a tree. That is not the sort of urban planning I would want. I would want that, there is greenery around. I know blocks of trees and blocks of houses are inevitable, but some way of making sure that there is greenery as well.
No, I connect with both of you, and I think finally to me, these spaces create memories for future. And what memories we would like to keep for our future generation. I mean, it's not only the past. So that leads me to the next two sets of questions. One is for me, what happens is that, when I look onto the Sarojini Nagar space now, and when in 99 I came for the first time in Delhi, I go through trauma. So those buildings are a metaphor of trauma now for me. Whereas those buildings are a metaphor of civilization or progress for someone. Now, do we create a standardized space where we can say garden space has something to do with trauma, resilience, memory, new memory creation?
I very much fear that children who are growing up in places where they are increasingly separated from any chance of interacting with. Madhulika has a young child, and this is a child who always has, from the time she was a baby, has had interaction with, she's been told this is this particular insect, this is this tree, this is this bird. And that it gives you a perspective on where you are in this world. That you share this world with. There's a natural world that you share this planet with, and unless children grow up in those kind of environments, but they're at least minimally, interacting with that, it is. I think in many ways it is traumatic, and it's you grow up divorced from reality. That is, I think. I mean, that's what I feel.
I couldn't add to that. I think that's absolutely, it encompasses what I feel as well.
For instance, when I will give an example. So, when I grew up, I was not in proper Kolkata. I was growing up in a suburban Kolkata of that time, which was full of ponds, insects, snakes. So it was a common phenomenon when my mother will go through the +2 answer sheets. I will sit with her. Snakes will also, because our room was in the downside and ponds will overflow in the monsoon. Now, today when I think, and I still remember those days, my mother will say casually, okay, there's a snake, please. So the trauma and the relation with ecosystem, immediately the mother was killing. So we were springing ourselves on the mud, easily doing it. And so somewhere it helped in building the curiosity also of sharing spaces with others. I think one of the crises for future, which you mentioned, tomorrow if we can't create a public space between the growing urban space and nature, we are going towards a disastrous, self-centered society. What do you suggest?
So not just self-centered and this thing, but also I think mentally that is going to be a problem. I mean, as it is, the sort of the overcrowding and the stressors of modern life are so huge that there's a lot of mental, illness and mental issues going around. I think that's going to add to it. It's just.
What is your thought of that?
I quite agree. And yeah, but maybe, and again, I feel that this is taken a very dark turn. We're talking. Yeah. I mean, I think really that these conversations are important. I think, and I can see a lot of young people sitting here, and one of the ideas behind us writing this book, of course, was that we want to write about and celebrate the gardens that are there in this city, talk about their history, talk about their horticulture. We went into several of the gardens. I mean, just for a matter of interest, we talked about some of the older gardens, like Lodi Garden is actually quite a historic garden also. We talked about the Tughlaq Garden, which Madhurika mentioned. We've talked about things like Shalimar Bagh, which, Shalimar Bagh, a lot of people are not aware that's actually a very historic Mughal garden. That was the garden in which, by the way, Aurangzeb was crowned. So interesting. Then you have Sundar Nursery, Sundar Nursery was actually set up as a nursery after independence to provide plants to the many new housing colonies that were being set up. And at that time, the plantation was very, very important. So I think we can celebrate. So our book is a celebration of the many different green space gardens we have, but also Madhurika's added a chapter on some of the other kinds of green spaces we have. But and the photographs that are there. Maybe if enough people see a book like this, read it, see the pictures, realize that if we are losing these gardens or we are not making sure that as we grow, we also grow, adding gardens to our urban scape, then this is something that we are going to lose.
Thank you so much. I think we should we should begin with a celebratory note. We have taken the dark turn. From the dark turn, we have moved again towards celebratory turn. So I think I will conclude over here. A big round of applause for all of you who have been here and patiently hearing us. It's a co-movement of celebrating these spaces. We are thankful to PVLF. I think without your brilliant idea of hosting it over here, so you deserve equally the credit, and the bookmakers, Sohail, and each and every one, and my colleague and also my co-worker, my friend Jivesh, and others are also over here. So a big thank you to all of you for being over here. Thank you so much.
I'd like to welcome our festival director, Mr. Kapil Gupta, to join our speakers on stage.
आ गया जूम कर पूरा